Thanks for joining us this evening for this month's episode of Veterans Voices. This month we'll be interviewing Captain U.S. Navy retired Dick Martino about his time in the Navy as well as his time on Ground Zero at 9/11. And we'll be hearing about Boatswain Mate First Class Julius Kelber aboard the USS Walke during World War II. Welcome back, everyone. So Dick, welcome. It's an honor to have you. And just kind of wanted to hear about where you were born, raised, where you grew up.
Okay, I was born in Marlborough in 1948. My parents lived at the time at Piave Square. That's when they first married. And when I was born, we lived there for a while, and then we moved to Chestnut Street, right down the street from Fry Shoe and Corbin Shoe. I grew up in that neighborhood. My folks sold the house in 1980 and moved down to the east side of Marlborough. And I used to hang around the fire station all the time. So I was on the auxiliary fire department growing up through high school and college. And when I was in college, I worked at General Motors as a guard, fire and police, for my summer job. And that was a good deal. I went to optometry school in Boston. It was Massachusetts College of Optometry. It's now New England College of Optometry. I started there in 1968 and graduated in 72. In 1971, they had a program in the Navy called the Senior Optometry Program. And I applied to that. They ended up accepting 15 students nationwide. I was lucky enough to be one of them. I graduated on June 4th, and June 5th at midnight I had to report to Bethesda for Navy Indoctrination School, Officer Indoctrination School. I was already an officer. I was commissioned my last year of optometry school as an ensign. And then I was promoted to JG when I graduated from optometry school. Now optometrists come into the service as all other, usually healthcare professionals, doctors and dentists and such as lieutenants. So 03. I stayed in the Navy till 1975. I was stationed in Washington for 2 years at Navy BMed at the medical clinic there. And then my last year, I served in Albany, Georgia. It was a Naval Air Station that closed a month before I got there. They must have heard I was coming. And so but we serviced the Marine Corps Supply Center there in town. And what they did is they rebuilt amphibious tanks that they were using in Vietnam. And it was so hot in Vietnam that they would open up the vents. And if they hit like a river or something, they would forget to close the vents, and the tanks would be submerged. So when they retrieved them all, they sent them back to the U.S. to be rehabbed and sent back. I served there until 75, and we moved home. I went into practice with Dr. Bob Rowe. I'm an optometrist by trade, and I served with him. I worked with him for 6 months, and then Pearl and I bought the practice, the office and the house and the records and everything, and we raised our girls there. We have 2 girls, Tracy and Carla. They're both married, and Carla blessed us with our granddaughter, Mia. She's 24 now. And so I served as the optometrist in town for 38 years. When I went back into the reserve. I stayed in the reserve 2 years. I was with the Military Sealift Command out of Boston, and I was the assistant medical officer. I had not met the medical officer until 2 years into the job, Dr. Patavina, I think his name was, and he was down at Weymouth most of the time. He didn't serve with us. And then I left for 4 to build up my practice and came back in 1981. I served in a Bethesda surgical team out of Lawrence. From there, we first started basically, I think it was 1988 or 89. Fleet Hospital came to Newport, which was like a MASH unit. It's a portable unit that's in the field. And so from the Fleet Hospital, I served there as director of admin for Fleet Hospital 7. It was a combat zone hospital, which meant that the hospital was set up right behind the enemy lines in the Gulf, We had 3 fleet hospitals over the Gulf, the first Gulf War in the 90s, early 90s. It was like, just like you'd see on MASH on TV. That's basically what it was. Although we had ISO containers, which we had a CBHU with our unit. It was a hospital unit, but it was the CBs. They would set up the ISO containers and level them and everything because those were our operating rooms. I was appointed the director of admin. I had my optometry NOBC and also Naval Officer Bill of Code, and also admin, because I realized that doctors and nurses have a lot of trouble with paperwork, as I did too. So I learned how to do it so that I could help them. But when the Fleet Hospital was commissioned, the commanding officer appointed me as the director of admin. And I served there until our Fleet Hospital went to Kansas City. Our CO went, but nobody else did. We all got commands, and I got a unit in Quincy called a Primus unit, which is physician reserves in medical universities and schools. And so I had nurses and doctors who were like fellows or residents that would drill, but only once a quarter. The rest of the time they were working in their hospitals and such. When I took the unit over, it was 17% ready. We couldn't deploy. In 1998 or 9, I can't remember offhand. But so I hooked up with one of the station keepers who happened to be a corpsman, and I said, we've got to get our readiness up. I said, this is ridiculous. So Weymouth Naval Air was still in operation, and we had to go there and help them in the clinic. We had to have rotations through the clinic. And so my wife Pearl and I had a picnic at our house. We invited the unit. There were 31 people in the unit. And I made a deal with them. I said, you can drill like you're drilling, but you have to do something extra. When your name is on the list to go to Weymouth, you have to go and you have to serve at the clinic. And I said, and if you don't go that month, you don't get paid. And they said that to me, well, you can't do that. I said, I can, because I sign off on your chits. I sign off on your paperwork. I said, this is the deal we have to make because we've got to get our readiness up. Well, in 1 year, we made it to 84%. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize this, but I was put in for a Navy commendation, which I received. So I got a Navy Achievement Award and a Navy commendation. From there, my unit was disestablished. Captain, who became an Admiral, John Brunelli, he was our readiness commander in Newport. And then he went to Washington, and then he became the head of the Naval Reserve. But when he was in Washington, he sent me a letter. Well, he signed it. And that was a unit action letter, which means that you're being disestablished. We were Naval Hospital, Long Beach. And they decided not to close the hospital. So they had a clinic, so they didn't need all these units. So we were one of the ones that was selected. So he said, so I called him. I said, what does this mean? He said, well, you have to find billets for everyone, jobs, and then you have to, your unit's going to be disestablished. So I found a billet for everyone in the unit except me, and so I got a phone call from one of the president of the board in Newport, and he said to me, "Do you have any problem with Korea?" I said, well, I wouldn't pick it. Why? And he said, well, we have a billet that's been vacant for 5 years. It's a staff medical officer in ComUS Korea out of New Haven. And he said, it's a pay billet, and it's been vacant, and it's a commander billet. I was a commander at the time. He said, so we want to offer that to you. Well, I had 18 years in, so I couldn't leave at 18 years. You don't get any retirement if you leave that early. So I said, well, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I mean, that's it. So I went to Korea for 3 summers. Mm-hmm. You can't get a good pizza in Korea. I tried. But the people are very beautiful over there, and it's very, very hot in August. It was a tough time because I had to leave my practice, and that's a busy time for an optometrist, but I had people cover me while I was gone. And it was almost 4 weeks that we were there. You probably have heard of it, UFL, ultrafocus lens. Mm-hmm. We supported those 3 years that I was there. And we worked alongside the South Korean, military. I worked with a fellow named Mr. Ree. He was a retired commander in the ROK Army. and at that time they didn't have loans for homes or for cars. If you bought a home or a car, you had to pay full price. That's it. And because Korea tries to be competitive in the world market, a Hyundai would cost almost double what it would cost here. But he bought his first house when he had been retired from the military, and 20 years after he and his wife married, they had enough money to buy their own home. But he was a really nice man. And I was a commander when I went there, and I was promoted in the off year to captain, and they had a party for me, like a wedding down, but they don't have coffee and donuts. They have sake and dried squid. Mm-hmm. And you chew that stuff, you start it at 9 o'clock and you get to swallow it by about noontime. But they were just so great. And I have 2 name tags, and one as a commander and one as a captain in Hangul, my name in Hangul. And so that was my last duty station. And in 1995, I applied to the diaconate program in the Catholic Church in the Boston Archdiocese. I was the deacon at St. Anne's in Marlborough. After Doug Peltak left, Doug went to IC, and then he went to Matthias. So we didn't have a deacon, so I went. It was a 5-year program, 4 years didactics and 1 year of anticipation, where you have to do all the testing, psychological testing and such. The church is a lot more vigilant now about who they accept to do ministry, as they were before. They weren't. It was a lot more liberal. So anyway, I became a deacon. I was ordained in 2020 as a deacon. So this is my 25th year, 2 days ago.
Oh,
so we were with
great.
2 other deacon couples that we all served. We all were ordained at the same time. We're at retirement age now, so I'm working kind of part-time, but I'm very actively involved with the New England Fire Chiefs. I'm the Catholic chaplain to the New England Fire Chiefs. The Protestant chaplain, we've known each other 30 years. And my friend, Father Mike Leckie, was the Catholic chaplain until 7 years ago. And when he turned 70, he retired and as a priest, and he retired from that job. And he said, I'm going to put your name in. I said, no. And I knew all the fire chiefs anyway, because I still go to the expos and such, and I know all the New England chiefs, most of them, the guys that are actively involved in that group. And so I was selected to be the new Catholic chaplain. So I've been doing that for about 7 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm the chaplain in Northborough, and I cover Shrewsbury when they need me, and Boylston when they need me, and such. Boylston has a chaplain, but he has moved, so if they can't get him, I'll get a call. So that's where we stand. So I had 22 years in the Navy. I could have stayed 30 at my rank, but because I was in the seminary, I couldn't be deployed. Mm-hmm. And when I talked to Admiral Brunelli about that, he said, if you don't leave, they'll ask you to leave. Do it on your own. So I did. And so that was one part of my life. The other part is the chaplains. And I was one of the charter members of the Mass Corps Fire Chaplains. We have the only corps in the country. There are associations, but they meet and they have lunch and they do that. We deploy. We train and we deploy. We've gone to Ground Zero. Some of our chaplains went to the Hurricane Katrina. 10 of us went to the Station nightclub a few years back, that 83 or 93. Lost 100 people there, 200 wounded and 100 passed. So we had 6 chaplains there in the morning, and 4 of us relieved them the night after the fire. They were still recovering then. When we went to Ground Zero, a friend of mine, John Foraker, made these signs for us. They're magnetic signs that we put on our vans when we went to Ground Zero. We got all free vehicles from Hertz and Avis and Budget. We got the idea from the fire marshal because he got us our first one from a company called Autorite in West Boylston. And I've met with the fellow a couple of times since Ground Zero. I have always go and thank him because he was the one that gave us the idea to just ask and we'll give you something. He wanted to give us a van for the whole deployment, and it was a 5-week deployment rotating through different people. Because of my military experience and admin, I have a list of everybody that went, when they went, blood types, social security numbers, and they were asking me, why do you need all that stuff? I said, well, it's a war zone. We were attacked. If we get attacked again and you need blood, we got to know what you need, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody was okay with that. I made certain just last week. We have a liaison, Chief Mike McLaughlin. He's retired from Stowe Fire, and we're good friends. And he works at the academy. He's our liaison to the chaplains and the marshal. And so I brought a book over to them with all of the deployments and everybody's name, so that they can be enrolled in the cancer registry for the Department of Fire Services.
Mm-hmm.
We were deployed by the fire marshal's office. We didn't just go there. Chaplains don't just show up. We're called to go, because we get in the way if we just show up. And we have a job to do. It's a ministry of presence. Whatever happened, we can't do anything about, but we can help people walk through their tragedy. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of listening, and you've known me long enough to know that I talk a lot, but I don't talk much when I go to these things. I listen to the people. We'll help them with, explaining to them that if it's an unattended death, the person's remains taken over by the state. They have to have an autopsy to find out why, or you have to think it's something bad until it's something that's natural. If somebody died naturally, but if it was unattended, it's a different scenario. And we help people try to understand that. We help them maybe choose a funeral home and help them set the plans up and things like that. We're also there for our people, because firemen and policemen and EMS do abnormal things as normal people. Mm-hmm. And it rents space after a while. We've lost a lot of good people because they didn't process it, just like PTSD. Mm-hmm. CISM, critical incident stress management, is the same as PTSD. So that's what I've done with my life. We just, you were so kind, and Mike was too, Mike Hennessy, because my dad was, I think he was the last remaining veteran in Marlborough.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of World War II
in
veterans
any of
remaining,
them, anywhere. Yeah.
For the viewers that don't know, your dad, Nunzi Martino, I mean, everybody knew him here in town.
Yeah.
And was a survivor of the USS Franklin, which was the most battle-damaged ship to remain afloat during the World War II. Was attacked with an aircraft carrier that was struck by a bomber off the coast of Japan. Suffered catastrophic damage.
She was, it was a Sunday morning, and they had loaded for a bomb run on Japan. They were 50 miles off the coast of Japan. And the kamikazes had just been commissioned a month or two before that. They came in low on a Sunday morning, and they had several bomb runs on her. Mm-hmm. My dad was trapped below decks for 5 hours. He was just going to his post. He had gone to Mass, and he was going down, had breakfast quick, and went down. Father O'Callahan was the chaplain aboard Franklin, and he was a professor at Holy Cross.
Okay.
And he died 19 years to the day that the ship was hit. It was April 19th or something like that. And my dad said in his interview a few years ago with Pat Padula that, they tried to sink her for 5 days, but they had good air coverage from their battle group. Ironically, how things work out, one of our chief chaplains, Jim Tilby, we're very good friends. He and I were talking about our dads, and they were in the Navy. And Jim said, what ship was your dad on? I said, Franklin. He said, Franklin? My dad was on the Guam. She was in your dad's battle group.
Yeah.
They fought the fires aboard ship and took some of the casualties off. Our dads met at their reunion. They had a reunion in Dedham. And Jim said to me, do you think your father would come out? And I said, well, I'll ask him. So I said, Dad, would you go to that dinner with me? He said, I'll go, but I'm not going to say anything. I said, well, you don't have to say anything. You're a survivor of Franklin. These guys think that's, really big. We all do, but you don't have to say anything. Just you being there is good. So they started talking to him about the day that they all experienced. It gave him permission to speak about things he's never spoken about. Mm-hmm. So the president of the group said, Nunzi, why don't you go up to the microphone and tell us your story? And he did the same thing he did when he was interviewed a couple of years ago here. It was on the tip of his tongue, but he never said it. You know, stories that I never heard of. Until Jim's dad died, my dad and his dad corresponded because they met at that dinner and they became fast friends.
Yeah.
So it's a small world,
Yeah.
you know, when you think about it. So that's my story. And we have 2 beautiful girls. Tracy's a music educator and her husband is too. And Kyle is the town accountant in Southborough, our youngest, and her husband's a phys ed teacher in Northborough. And he's one of our football coaches at the high school with my nephew, Pete Gleason, my sister's son. And and Mia, our granddaughter, graduated from UNH with honors. So she works for Oracle. She's 24. She's on her own now. She's really doing well. She's got a nice young man in her life, and we'll see where that goes. You know, I had to vet him when she started dating him, but he's okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dick. That's a really amazing story of a long time of service. So we thank you for that.
Well, it's been an honor and a blessing to do it. And fire chaplains and police chaplains are the only people in fire and police that don't have to retire at 65.
Okay.
We can stay till we're 95, you know. And some guys kind of resent that. I don't feel my age, but I'll hopefully keep doing it as long as I can, because my wife likes it because it gets me out of the house a little bit more.
Yeah.
But because you never know when you'll be going. And I serve the police department too in Northborough.
Okay.
So it's I've known the chief since he was a young boy. But yeah, it's we can't public service. People give up a lot to do it, and we have to maintain them physically and mentally, and that's what we try to do with CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management. You had a tough call. Everybody, when we meet, it's what we call a debriefing, and it just helps people to share their experience that someone might be afraid to talk about because they think he was, not up to speed or whatever. But once everybody realizes that they all have different perspectives of that same call that can help somebody else heal, that's what we try to do. And it's a gift to do that. And because there's so much training involved, just like the military, there's so much training involved. You don't want people to walk out the door just because they've had a tough call. And in wartime, that happens too. There's other ways of treating things. We have a lot of suicide in fire and police and EMS and military, and that's because our human brain can't get its hands around the bad stuff that we have to plow through. And we just try to help to make that a little bit easier for everybody. When we deployed all the chaplains to Ground Zero, we made certain that they were debriefed when they came home, because they were working on the pile. They were in the morgues and bringing the body parts in and having to tag things, and it was not an easy job. No. But our chaplains persevered, and we still have some of them have died from Ground Zero because of the toxins. And I myself have cancer, but so far it's stable. And because my wife says I haven't been stable in years, but I don't think she's talking about my health. But it's just it's a service that we provide because we feel that it's very important to do. Yeah, we're all on the same page with that, and it helps. It's a brother and sisterhood. We have women chaplains too, and we have a rabbi. We don't have an imam yet, but I'm sure at some point we probably will. We have ministers, priests, deacons, and we all just treat each other as brothers and sisters. Yeah. So just like the military, we rely on each other to get home. You're in the Navy, you've done very well. Matt made it to commander, which is a great thing, and it's well deserved too. And so hopefully when 06 comes around, you'll be part of that too.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. So. Well, I thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, well, thank you for serving others, and thank you for your service.
Okay, I just wanted to mention a few things. This is a piece of steel from Ground Zero. All of the families of the victims got a piece of steel just like that. An artist was commissioned to make them out of girders from 9/11. And the 28 chaplains that went to Ground Zero were presented those. And we had 30 pieces. We gave one to the fire marshal, and that is at the Department of Fire Services. And also we gave it to a group of firefighter buffs from Boston, and Paul Revere was one of the founding members of that. This is the helmet that I wore at Ground Zero. I've retired it now. I have a new helmet, but the chief let me keep my old one. And this is the signs, one of the signs that was on the vans that went to Ground Zero for the people to see that we were going there to help. And they really appreciated it. They would clap when the trucks came, and they clap when they left. And all of the companies, Hertz and Avis and Budget, Duran Chevrolet gave us a van 1 month. One of the other, I think Sunnyside Motors gave us one. We paid for no transportation, except we had to pay gas. But they were kind enough to give us vehicles to take us back and forth to New York. And and that's that.
All right, and with that, we'll be taking a short break. Welcome back, and for this month's Veterans Profile, we'll be hearing about Boatswain Mate First Class Julius Joseph Kelber. Julius was born the 12th of April, 1908 in Exeter, New Hampshire, the oldest of two sons born to Gasparis and Adelia Kelber. He enlisted into the Navy the 11th of December, 1926, and received his basic training at Naval Station Newport, Rhode Island, until the 16th of February, 1927. He was first assigned to the USS Florida battleship from the 1st of March 1927 until the 14th of October 1930. He was promoted to Seaman First Class the 2nd of January 1928. He extended his original enlistment and was assigned to the USS Pennsylvania, another battleship, from the 14th of October 1930 until the 10th of July 1931. He married Elizabeth Kavanaugh in 1930, and together they would have one son, David. He was transferred to the USS Fairfax, a destroyer, and served until his discharge the 21st of October 1932. He re-enlisted the next day and continued to serve aboard the Fairfax until the 3rd of January 1934, one day after he was promoted to coxswain. He next served aboard the USS Hannibal AG-1 until the 23rd of December 1935. While aboard the Hannibal, he was commended by his commanding officer for courage and presence of mind displayed when motor whaleboat capsized on 19 April 1934. Julius next served at the Naval Torpedo Station in Newport, Rhode Island until the 31st of January 1938. He was transferred to the USS Altair AD-11, where he was promoted to Boatswain Mate Second Class in August and served until his discharge the 7th of November 1939. Julius again re-enlisted the 12th of January 1940 and was assigned to the commissioning crew of the USS Walke DD-416 on the 12th of April 1940. The Walke performed convoy duty briefly before the Second World War began, and following the attack on Pearl Harbor, departed for the Pacific Theater. Julius was promoted to Boatswain Mate First Class the 15th of August 1941. The Walke performed screen duty for the Yorktown while carrier-based aircraft attacked Japanese-held islands in the Makin Islands early in 1942. While operating near Guadalcanal on the 15th of November 1942, the Walke was struck by torpedoes from a Japanese destroyer, sinking the vessel and taking 90 of her crew, including Julius, with her. Kelber Drive in Marlborough is named in his honor. And tonight we'll remember Boatswain Mate First Class Julius Kelber. So now we're going to talk about a couple things going on locally for veterans. So November 10th is the Marine Corps birthday, and there's quite a bit of celebrations going on locally within the state and around the country. Obviously a big celebration down in Philadelphia at Ton Tavern. So if you're interested in that, give a look out for some events involving that. And the Warrior Within Yoga Project will be starting back up at the American Heritage Museum in Hudson on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. And that's open to veterans, first responders, and their families. So if anybody's interested, come on down. It's a great place to do yoga right above the tanks. And Dick, do you have anything you'd like to share about veterans programs, anything that can benefit veterans?
I do. My dad just passed away 2 years ago at 101 and a half. And for many years, he did not sign on with the veterans, with the VA. There was a time when he needed some help with hearing aids because he worked for General Motors for many years. And every time they have a contract, they take something out to give something up back. And the hearing aids were one of the problems of that, or one of the losses there. So I said, Dad, you have nothing to lose. You've earned it. So he finally went to the VA in Worcester and fell in love with the audiologist there, Dr. Megan. She was very, very good to him. And then he was an advocate. He really loved the VA. He and I both are members of the ITAM here in Marlborough. And they would always talk about the different things that they did at the VA. Well, when my dad was in for his physical one year, probably when he was 90, 99, or maybe close to 100, the primary care doctor said to him, well, you know, we have a home-based primary care program. And within this region, they had, at that time, maybe more now, they had 90 people that were in this program. And so for the veterans, they would have everyone come to the house. He had a nurse practitioner who was in charge of the program. There was a medical doctor that oversaw it, but Jason, who was the primary care, he was a nurse practitioner, would schedule everybody to come in. We had a nurse, 2 backup nurses. We had social worker, physical therapy, occupational therapy, pharmacy, dietary, psychiatric help if you needed it, a counselor. And they all came to the home, my dad's home. So we used to leave the door open, and he loved it because he had all these people coming in, and he would interact with them, and he'd talk about his experiences in the Navy. And I spoke about that where he was, met my friend Jim Tilby's dad, and that gave him permission to talk about his experiences. And so he talked about his experiences at the VA. They were nothing but kind. Towards the end of his life, he had to go to hospice, and just for a short period. And the VA was involved in that. The home-based primary care, when he came home, they picked up again, taking him. So the VA has very special programs. Anyone who's a veteran who has paid their dues by answering the call to defend their country is eligible for this. Don't be afraid to at least go and search it out and see what you think. The people at the VA in Worcester, I've been there a number of times now with my dad, and also I go periodically. I have to go once a year because I have military insurance, but I also have the VA benefit too that I really don't use as much, but they're nothing but kind. Mm-hmm. And they're very, very helpful with making sure that, you get the help you need. If you're a veteran and you go there, you're eligible for eyewear. I don't think they do dental unless it's related to military things for veterans, unless there was something that, from a blast or something like that that you were in. But medications, and they have doctors there that, primary care. So you can have your primary care on the outside. The VA primary care keeps you in the program. You have to go once a year to see them. But it's been a wonderful program, and I can say with the experience that we had with Dad, it really was a blessing. And a lot of the people from that program came to his funeral. Yeah. Which was packed because you were there. Yeah. And, the church was filled. And my sister made a comment at the end. She said, half the people there I didn't know. I said, well, that's the half that we knew. Because when a person lives to be 101, their kids are old too. So we make a lot of acquaintances over the years. But yeah, so don't be afraid to check into the VA and just seek it out and see what you think. I think you'll be very pleased with the care and the compassion that you get from them.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. And for anyone that has any questions about their VA eligibility, you can get in touch with Mike Hennessy at the Veterans Office on New Street, 40 New Street in Marlborough. His email, phone number are online. And other avenues are, through your local veterans organizations, the Italian American Club, American Legion, the Disabled American Veterans, and AMVETS all have local posts here in the city. So those are other avenues to, reach out to, and the umbrella organizations can point you in the right direction. So anybody has any questions, those are a couple avenues you can use. And with that, we'll be closing for the evening. So thank you again for joining us for this month's episode of Veterans Voices.